So obviously I look great today. I could have gotten up and gotten all made up and showered and made myself real pretty before I did this. I just don't feel like this is a subject where getting dressed up or putting on makeup and trying to be pretty is even necessary to overcome like the mediocrity of what we're talking about. Because what we're talking about today is the tarot spread in chapter 8 of Lanny Serum's Handbook for Mortals. I hope I'm saying that right. Annie with an L, Lanny, not Laney. I don't care. We're going to take these here tarot cards of mine. I've read tarot cards for I think I got my first tarot deck in like 1995. God, that's over 20 years ago. We're going to take these here handy dandy cards of mine, and we're going to walk through all the steps of the really unfamiliar and unusual tarot spread that she writes about in chapter 8 to help her decide between Jackson and Mac. So let's take a look. Okay, so right off the bat, I have to tell you that I don't have an overhead rig for this, for my phone. Basically, I've constructed one myself out of like an OT light and some duct tape and a box and some rocks and hope. So it'll be jiggly, it'll be wiggly, but whatever. This is how I gotta get this done. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that Lanny, Zany starts out her tarot reading with, she shuffles the cards, she cuts them into 3 piles, never quite mentions if the piles remain in 3. Like, let's say these are the cards I've already got set up for her reading specifically, but let's say this was my deck and I was going to shuffle them, and I was going to be like, okay, I'm going to shuffle it and cut it into 3 piles. So sometimes you'll go to a reader and they will shuffle and they'll cut into 3 piles, and they'll either ask you to pick a pile, or they will put the piles back together, or they will leave the piles separate, and then they will draw like 1, 2, 3. There's no, like, Lainey never mentions in there if that's what she does or how she does it, so I'm skipping that part since there's no detail. Skipping parts that don't have detail is actually going to make reading the entire book better. So what she does is she says, she talks to her guides, which, if you're looking at this in the context of the recap, is just really like pontificating and stuck up. She goes to her spirit guides, who are just a little bit better than yours, and tells them that she's trying to figure out who would be the best overall for my highest and best good, and for his highest and best good as well. Then she says to her guides that Jackson should come up as the King of Wands and Mac as the King of Cups. So she's saying, okay, well, here are my signifiers. Here's the problem with that. That's not how signifiers work in tarot. One, I don't know very many people who use signifiers anymore. If you go to a reader who uses a signifier, it's either because they're probably in their 70s or their 80s, or they were taught by someone who is now in their 70s or 80s. Signifiers are just completely like I've never once gone to a professional reader, and I've gone to a lot of professional readers, and I've gotten readings from a lot of friends. I have never met someone who actually uses a signifier in tarot. If they did use a signifier, the way that you use a signifier is not, oh, hey, magically pop up somewhere in this deck where it's convenient and be this specific card. That doesn't work. It probably works for, you know, Zanny or Zadeh, because she is magic with a K, and probably all sorts of other unnecessary consonants in there too. So she might be able to magic and you know, I don't know, hereditary witch her way into that card coming up perfectly. But generally that's a really stupid way of doing it. Generally, if you're going to do a signifier, that signifier, if you're doing a Celtic cross, you'd be like, oh, there's my, actually that actually could be a signifier, but that could be a signifier card. But you could say, okay, this is my signifier, and then this is what's crossing, and it would be like in the first position of a thing, of a spread. Speaking of spreads, I don't understand the spread that Lene has come up with here, because, well, you'll see why. There are a lot of different tarot spreads. I think what she uses here is like a bastardized version of the double triad. Really, it would have made more sense for her as a super profound and experienced witchy divination woman with all of her magic with a K. She probably should have known better to use like the decision game. I think would be the one I would go with for this, would be the decision game. But no, it's like a bastardized double triad. Here's another thing that I forgot to mention when it comes to signifiers. The cards she picks to signify the men, if you're going to use tarot signifiers, you don't just get to, I mean, you can just look at a card and go, oh, this looks like the person that I'm thinking of, so I want to use this one for them. You can. But traditionally, if you're using signifiers in tarot, what you're going to be using will be specific suits for specific reasons and for specific, ages and such. So kings, I generally would say, would be a signifier for someone who was, over 30, married, that kind of thing. It would not be for a 20-something guy in a band in Vegas living it up. All right, now that I've talked for 5 minutes about stupid shit you don't care about, let's take a look at the first card she lays down. Zany lays down first. I gotta make sure I can get all this in. She first lays down the High Priestess, which she says reminds her of her mother. And so that's the way she interprets her. I'm not gonna argue with that really, because you can definitely interpret tarot that way. You can go, this looks like somebody, and the way the picture looks means this. Another thing that actually makes me think, okay, that's actually a good one for her mom. My tape and hope failed me for a second there. If I was doing a reading for Zanzibar, what I would say is, hey, that's your mom, because her mom is in a sort of initiative role. She is the one that introduced Lainey into magic and all that stuff with a K. So she is, I would take that as a, yeah, that's fine. She's also like concerned with liminal spaces, and since her mom sort of walks between worlds, that makes sense too. That one, not a big deal, especially since it has all these supernatural elements implied too to the woman in the card. And the next one that she comes up with is the Chariot. Ooh. And the Chariot, Zanzibar says that it means journey. Sometimes it means a journey, though. I mean, that's like one meaning to this card. It could be overcoming adversity. It could be making a decision in haste, like too quickly. It could mean that an urgency to control your own emotions, a need for escape. It's not a wrong interpretation, but it is a simplistic one, especially when you look at it like next to her mother and you go, oh, hey, that's representing her mother. Oh, and the Chariot, which can represent escape or can represent, overcoming adversity. Like, oh, she's getting away from her mom who's like magically manipulating her. Like, this is fine. It just is just very simplistic for unnecessary and lazy reasons. The next card she turns over is the Fool. I can actually scoot these over because I think this card is only 3 spreads wide, or the spread is only 3 cards wide. So she turns over the Fool, and she actually, and I'll put this in the recap, plagiarizes directly the meaning of the card and makes it sound like she wrote it. So, haha, you're a plagiarist, Lainey Sarum. Come on, how much lazier can you be? So she, I keep fussing with these because I'm like, oh my gosh, it doesn't look just perfectly right. You don't care. You just want to hear me bitch about this stuff. So the Fool is what she turns over. And the first thing she says on there is, the Fool doesn't mean you're stupid or silly, but rather it's the card of infinite possibilities, which is one of the things that is plagiarized. However, I very much disagree with the idea that the Fool can't mean that you're being silly, because this dude is not looking where he's going and is about to step off a cliff. You can't really see it that well in this, but the interpretation of the card is a dude kind of looking at the sky, whistling and happily going along while his dog is like, yo, dickhead, you're about to walk off the edge of the cliff. That is literally the illustration on any Rider-Waite based tarot illustration that you're going to see traditionally, which she does mention by, plagiarizing it directly out of the How to Read Tarot book. I'll explain more about that in the blog post. But yeah, it does indicate foolishness. and naivete, and so it still works. Okay, it still works in the grand scheme of her book. It's just now Lainey is departing from wanting to criticize her character and saying that there's no foolishness involved. When I'm looking at this, what I would say if I knew the situation, even if I knew the situation, I mean, wouldn't even have to know the situation. I could look at this and go, hey, somebody is rushing into something. Maybe I would say there was a woman involved, but they are definitely rushing into something where there's a liminal space, or they're caught between something. They're making a rush decision and they're doing it foolishly. That's how I would read that. Not, oh gosh, my mom, and I went on a journey to Vegas, and I'm totally not stupid for doing so. I'm just full of possibilities. So she says that the next 3 cards she turns over directly underneath those cards, and it's the Magician, the Devil, and the Lovers. And she is quick. I mean, and we're talking like quick. She's quick to say, and look, I did it again. Look, I'm going to keep rearranging these. You're going to be like, Jenny, just get on with it. This video is like 1,000 years long already, and there you are, and you're messing with stuff, and the rocks are not going to hold forever. Your camera will fall. It will probably. Look at, I'm trying to fix it with the rocks. Okay. So she's got the Magician, the Devil, and the Lovers. And she says, okay, the Magician, she's like, oh, well, that's she basically takes it literally. She's like, well, I have to take that literally, obviously, because she works in a magic show. You don't have to take it literally, Lando. It can be power, skill, creation, self-confidence. It actually could mean sleight of hand and deception. I don't think of deception in a malicious way, but just like concealing, keeping secret, esoteric, type stuff. Which even tied with this makes a lot of sense. Then the Devil, quick to say, that doesn't mean the real devil. It's not the real devil, guys, not the real one. Which you always hear about, like, oh, the devil isn't really the devil, and death isn't really the death card. And I'm actually surprised she doesn't go to there's death card doesn't really mean death thing, because that's like the thing that you hear the most often is, oh yeah, the devil and death, just ignore those. They're not really bad cards. This absolutely is a negative card. This means like bondage and subservience, and it means, like downfall. And when I say bondage, I mean the bad kind. I got hung up there a second. I'm like, bondage, that's not bad. No, bondage, the bad kind of bondage, like being enslaved to something. Failure. This is not a great card, but in the book, she says, well, gosh, I just don't know what this one means. Okay, well, you've been reading cards your entire life. You can look at this spread and you can't tell what this means in the middle, what this very common major arcana card means. You can't figure it out in all of the, okay, whatever. But yeah, you're going to be burned at the stake for being a witch because you're so good at this. Then the Lovers. And she says, it meant I could have a relationship. Oh, she said she's going to come back to that. That's the thing. So she doesn't understand. She's going to come back to it when she can take all the cards in at once. Yes, that is something that you absolutely can do, but she doesn't come back and do it. All right, the Lovers. Oh, this means I can have a relationship. Yeah, it can mean that. It does mean love, but it also means things like freedom to express emotions that maybe you didn't have before. Optimism, trusting people. This spread could absolutely be Zarla's spread, okay? Because it could be, hey, here's her mother, all right? And look at the way these are positioned. For a spread that, to me, it looks very made up. It seems like a made up spread to look more witchy and interesting, okay? But the way that it's made up doesn't even make sense, because these cards can all be read together. You can read them. You can read them mirroring. You can read them, well, I guess you can't read them across because they're not 3 rows, but you can mirror them. You can pair them. You can read the rows and, stick them together. There's all sorts of ways to look at this, because the Fool can mirror the High Priestess. Here we've got wisdom and esoteric secrets and things like that. Here's the Magician, and then in Lene's case, we've got the Magician being, sleight of hand and trickery, as opposed to the true magic of her mother and the true magic that she has. We've got the Devil being failure, and we've got the Chariot being, in this case, could be making a decision, rushing away. Maybe rushing away to this has created like the idea of she's going to fail because she was so naive, and she's embracing this over this. And so now she's there, there's an element of failure there, a doomed to failure sort of thing. But on the other hand, now she's away from her mother and she's free to express this emotion, be open and honest. And while this is trickery, this is mirrored by openness and honesty. I mean, there are all sorts of ways that you can read these cards together in a way that would still work for that character. And rather than write an interesting and thoughtful take on it, she chose to just go, I don't really know what this means, so I guess I'll come back to it later. I hope you forget about it, reader, because I'm definitely not coming back. All right, so pushing these aside for a minute, because now we got to do the two big time, the real ones. This is where she says, this is where things get weird, because I assumed that she would lay down another 3 and it would just be a 3x3. It would be a 9 card, okay? She doesn't. She decides to lay down 2 piles, and she just basically keeps laying down cards until the ones she likes comes up. So she lays down 2 piles to represent each relationship, and then the signifier through her magic with a K, magic, is going to come up, and she's, and that's going to tell her about the pile that, or whatever. So I'm going to move these further aside because I probably will come back to these. I might not need to. I'll just keep them out anyway. So the first pile she puts down, the first card she puts down is the 8 of Wands. Well, she says 8 of Wands, mine say 8 of Staffs. It's the same damn thing. It's just a different name. It's like somehow, like sometimes when you pick up a deck and pentacles are coins instead of pentacles, or, staffs or staffs instead of wands, or wands instead of staffs, or, whatever. Sometimes shit changes. So it's the same damn card. It's just got a different word on it. Get off my back. So 8 of Staffs comes up, or 8 of Wands comes up, and she says, oh, well, that's meant to represent Cupid's arrows, and that means he likes me. Okay, now she already knows 2 dudes like her, obviously. What this actually, the meaning behind the card actually means is things moving too fast, and making decisions in haste, which, again, we've already seen with the Chariot. Okay, so, but no, this means these scary-ass tree branches in the night with their jagged edges in the moonlight, obviously. And granted, her cards probably don't look like this because she's probably using just a standard rider deck, but this is the one that I'm using. Anyway, the point is, that doesn't look like, oh yeah, it means he likes me, oh my gosh. She lays down another card on the pile. It's the 3 of Pentacles. All right. So the 3 of Pentacles, she says, oh, it's a relationship. Again, technically it could be. That would be really simplistic. This is actually, I would say, more about teamwork or a group project, something platonic. Not necessarily love, love, love. This is how I would read it. Maybe, I don't know, I would read this as somebody moving into a hasty decision about someone they work with. Again, that's just me. I didn't write the book. The next one that comes up is the 3 of Cups. She said, and that one is a celebration, an issue that's been resolved, healing from a bad situation. She turns over the sun, which can be love and devotion, and an outlook for like a good marriage, like, oh, hey, you're going to get engaged and you're going to have a good marriage type thing. It can also mean like good friendship. It can mean literal warmth and fun, like fun in the sun, like, oh, hey, you're going on a vacation somewhere nice, like that kind of thing. It depends on how it comes up. And then the 5 of Pentacles, which mean financial loss and poverty and hardship. So she takes these 3 cards to mean, oh, hey, this is showing me that, what does she say? I gotta look it up. The relationship could be great, but not perfect. Okay, that can be said of anything. In general, I could just be like, you could like die tomorrow or you won't. So thank you, give me my money. Ching, ching, ching. That was my cash register noise. I actually don't think I've heard an actual cash register since my grandma's business closed when I was 4. Anyway, the point is, we're looking at the 3 of Cups here, which is celebration, healing from a bad situation, oh, hey, engagement, happiness, blah, 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 and then financial misery and woes. It's not telling her, hey, it's going to be, oh, it can be great, but not perfect. It's kind of telling her that, Yeah, she could get with this guy and be happy, but she's going to be poor, which makes sense because it ends up being Jackson's pile. And he has a band, and, you know, unless he... Well, it's the plain white tees. I guess they're going to be okay. So she just keeps turning shit over. Which is the... Let's see, the thing that comes up first is Nine of Cups. I have these in order, but I'm checking my notes. Nine of Cups is wishes fulfilled and contentment. I have a hard time believing maybe you would be content being super poor, begging outside of a church. It looks all nice and warm inside, and you're outside in the snow with your broke-ass leg, and no shoes on. Maybe you would be, yeah, really content and happy, and would feel like all your wishes and dreams had come true, but I just think it's just a really bad reading of the cards, or a really bad way that she tries to establish a reading within the book. And of course, ta-da, that's the King of Staffs. That means that it's... Okay, so shocker, when you're recording like 20 minutes worth of video, which I did not realize it would be 20 minutes worth. I thought I could get this done in like 5. Haha, right. You should probably have your phone plugged in, and you should also make sure that you have enough room on your phone. So, anyway, I got cut off. That's Jackson. Yay, we know that that's Jackson's pile now. All right, so yeah, her intuition was telling me that did I cover this part? Because she said, my intuition was telling me that the entire combo had an extra meaning to it. Well, that's how tarot works. That's how you don't just pick out a few. All right, so she goes on to the next pile, right? All right, and it's the Ace of Cups. And then this meant that he'd love me. All right, love is a part of it, but overall, this card is about like total fulfillment, abundance, like your cup literally running over. All right, you having everything you need, having so much, and everything being just right. It's not just, oh, he'd love me. All right. Now, the Two of Cups come up. This one is about love in a passionate and romantic sense. This is the one that makes me go, okay, this is a thing about specifically Mac. What I'm looking at here is going, since we know it's Mac's pile, because she's magic, and she's going to summon this other card to signify him up really quick. But, I mean, it's literally saying, like, oh, hey, a relationship with this dude, this is, like, perfect. This is going to be, like, the best thing ever. So then, boom, Ten of Pentacles comes up. I call this the inheritance card, really, because it's a lot to do with money. It's a lot to do with, like, family matters, but specifically family matters around money. I always kind of assume that, like, the going under the bridge thing is, like, the idea of crossing through a liminal space. So like I said, I interpret this one as an inheritance or money within a family. But she interprets it with the Four of Staffs, or the Four of Wands, as being about marriage. And the Four of Wands actually is the marriage card. This is marriage. This is home. This is romance. This is starting a family. This is really the only card she needs to go, oh, hey, I could be with this person forever and ever. But then she also throws in the Ten of Cups, which she says is a happy family. Or actually, sorry, I've moved on too fast. The Ten of Cups has its own thing in my notes here. But she says specifically that these cards, quote, could refer to a marriage. Could. Well, no, this card, like, actually, move these over. This card refers to marriage. It absolutely refers to marriage. It's not, it could refer to a marriage. This refers to a marriage. You didn't need these two other cards to tell me that, all right? Unless you're trying to tell me that there's a prenup involved. More on that later, okay? Because I actually have my own theories on this whole nonsense. Surprise, after, 20 minutes. Oh, Jen, you have your own theory? Really? Will you share it with us? I hope you will. You're usually not verbose at all. So yeah, she doesn't need these 3 cards to tell us about that this could mean she could get married. Especially when we're like, okay, and like, look at this. If she did get married, it would be like the super best, happiest marriage ever in the whole wide world. With a prenup, I guess. So yeah, the next card that she turns over is the Ten of Cups. Just like Liza Zanelli says, it's about having a happy family. So even there, we're still seeing like all of this perfect stuff, right? The next one that came up is the Wheel of Fortune. This is my absolute favorite thing because she turns over 2 cards in conjunction and talks about them. Talks about the Wheel of Fortune and the Eight of Swords. And she says, the Wheel of Fortune, okay, that meant all of those could happen. And then the Eight of Swords, but it also means it could all go wrong. Okay, well, I'm sorry, bitch, but the Wheel of Fortune means that it could go either way, too. You didn't need this. A lot of this shit, very much like her prose that she writes, is unnecessary garbage that she doesn't need to get the point across. The Wheel of Fortune itself is a hey, it could go either way. Surrounded by positives and negatives, however, there are a lot of positives. All of this shit behind it, I'm thinking that, hey, what this is saying is, if you don't fuck it up, if you don't do something stupid like, the Eight of Swords is conflict, self-imposed isolation, that kind of thing. So, hey, maybe if you don't close yourself off and play stupid fucking mind games with this guy, which you're going to do because that's the plot of the book, then, yeah, you can have all of this, the happiness, the everything, all right? So she has these 2 piles. And then, of course, the next thing that comes up is Mac. So then she goes, oh my gosh, either one of these could be, they're just basically, so exactly the same. I could be with either one of them. Clearly, this is your better bet because this one had all of the cards that said specifically, this will be the perfect relationship. This one is yeah, you'll be kind of happy, but you're also going to be poor limping outside of a church in the snow with a broke-ass leg. This is stupid. This is just the dumbest thing I've ever... So anyway, then she decides, okay, she's going to turn over the final 3 cards. So I guess what I'm assuming here is that the spread in itself, and I don't have enough room on here to show you exactly, but that the spread is going to look something like this, with 2 piles of a ton of cards underneath it, and then another, so I'll move these up. You got the idea. That there would be then the 2 piles, and then another, and again, I've never heard, I think this is a bastardization of a double triad, but whatever. So then the action shifts because she's about to turn over the last card. Now she says it's the last card, but then at the same time her mother turns it over, and it's the Tower, and then her mom turns over 2 more, Death and the World. Okay, so here's the story about the Tower. All right. She, like I said, Lizard says it's the final card. Her mom turns over 2. So then her mom is like, oh yeah, I guess Zinnia has this difficult journey ahead of her. Oh, okay, no shit. Absolutely fucking no shit at all that this would be a difficult journey, because what I'm seeing here, okay, this is total destruction. Look at what's happening on this card. This isn't a good time. This isn't fit. There are people falling on fire into the water. Okay, this is total disaster, total reversal of fortune, complete change of everything about you, your friendships, all that kind of stuff. Or it's ridiculous. It's an upheaval of plans. And death means almost the exact same thing, except for not necessarily with all the negative connotations, but next to the Tower it would. What death is saying is, hey, you're going to have a big, gigantic, abrupt, total change. You might lose friends. You might lose family. There's going to be some sort of transformation, because death in itself is a transformation. Possibly you could die, based on the other stuff around. And then the World is supposed to be the end result. It's supposed to be the ultimate change. And the end result of everything here, the ultimate change. If somebody got these 3 cards in a reading, if I saw this in the last part of not even in the last part, if I got all of these in a reading in the right combination, I would say, and if this were the reading I was doing, because I don't know, this is not a reading I'm familiar with, but like I said, if we're going, this is past, present, future, I would tell somebody they're going to die, soon, and it's going to be an accident, and it's going to be literal actual death. Lainey did say that these are the past. Lanny said that these are going to be the past. Lambert, the terrible writer. These are the past, these are the present, these are the future. So the future is she's gonna fucking die. All right, and I think actually later in the book she has a death scare, she is going to die. There is going to be death involved, and finally we'll be free. Just kidding, she'll survive. So the spread doesn't, I mean, this is just, it says what she says that it says, okay? To a point. In a very literal, like, this looks good on camera thing. But she never came back to the devil. Now, if this were a spread that I used, and I wish I could get it so that you could see the whole thing in there, but if this were a spread that I was using and I was reading, and it was like not some weird old, I honestly, I've never seen or heard of a spread like this. Anyway, but if this were mine, and I was going, this is past, present, future, and then this is a decision I'm making between the two dudes, I would probably say, hey, the devil, which, like I said, she never comes back. She never comes back to do this. She never comes back to say, oh, that's what the devil means. Submission, bondage, downfall, failure. I would tell her, avoid these guys because you're going to die. And that's not like a joke. That's not like me saying, haha, they're all trouble and this book sucks and blah, blah, blah. I'm saying if this was a reading I was giving somebody for real, I would look at this and I would go, okay, like you've got deception here, sleight of hand, false magic, basically, compared to real magic. You've got, an escape. You've made a rash decision. You're making a rash decision that's going to throw you into bondage, is going to throw you into chains, is going to throw you into whatever. And hey, it's between these two guys. And I guess in Lanny's mind, they look the same on paper, but really the outcomes are quite different. One is like emotional ness with material poverty, and the other one is like fulfillment of all your hopes and dreams emotionally, monetarily. This guy is clearly the guy to go with. But basically, what I'm seeing is like the choice between the two of them is the choice between whether or not you fucking die. Maybe don't pick either of them. That's the reading that I would give this person. But obviously, this person did not come to me for a reading. This is, like, I don't know, Zoranda Lambert. Have I called her that yet? This is her doing a reading for herself. But another interesting way to look at it, I think, would also be, is this could be a reading for Delia, to be honest. Not because she's torn between two men, but because, there's her, there's Charles Spellman, the rushed decision of having a baby that turned out to be the fucking devil. I'm kidding. I'm joking. Anyway, that's my, I'm interested to see what any of you who, like, read cards, if you feel I've been unfair to this reading, if you're like, oh, hey, I know that spread, please let me know, because I would love to read about it. I have never seen a spread like this, and I'm like, I want to say that it's made up just because of how ridiculous the idea is of, I'm going to do this spread and then just turn over cards until the right cards come up, the ones that I have magically denoted as signifiers. But please, if this is like a 9x9 or something spread that you have seen, or 9x9, a 9 card 3x3 spread that you have seen before, I would love to know the name of it or have a link or something so I could check it out, because it seems to me, from a very judgmental place and not open-minded at all, it seems to me like a really, like, crappy and ineffectual spread. So there you have it. There's the tarot spread from Handbook for Mortals, the tarot-themed book that really skimps on the creativity when it comes to tarot.